Imagine you have an augmented intelligence that's constantly analyzing security data. It's automatically detecting threats and it's saving security analysts tons of hours of work. And really, that's the power of AI in action. And I like how Google Security Operations has taken full advantage of it. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the State of Enterprise IT Security Edition. I'm your host, Brad Bussie, Chief Information Security Officer at E360. Today is a little bit different than our regular podcast. I wanted to actually talk to you about something specific, one topic, and it's going to be Google Security Operations, and outline how Google is approaching multi-layered defense in the cloud. Now, the ever-present challenge of cybersecurity in the cloud era demands what I would say is constant vigilance. And traditional security tools and solutions, they often resemble something like a fortress with some crumbling walls. And some of that's our fault from an industry perspective, as we are moving away from the perimeter and some of the things that we would think of as the what many call the castle and moat protection strategy. And we're honestly just struggling to keep pace with the relentless evolution of cyber threats. But I would like to take a look, and I don't normally endorse any specific technology, but what I like to do is talk about how organizations are doing it right in my perspective. And I think today, just talking about Google Security Operations and the platform, giving you a little information about that pretty high level, and just talk about how they are building that, we'll call it a fortress in the cloud. So imagine the crumbling walls, but now imagine that fortress instead. So what I think would be helpful is looking at the security operations landscape. And I think of this, and it might just be all the time spent supporting the Department of Defense, but I think of it as a pretty complex battlefield. And when we look at complexity, that is definitely the enemy when it comes to security. Security should be simple, and the challenge is not making it simpler. So before we delve into the Google offerings, let's revisit some of the fundamentals. Now, security operations, or as many of you will hear it, SecOps for short, it refers to a critical function of safeguarding your organization from cyber attacks. Now, imagine a complex battlefield where SecOps teams wage a continuous war against cyber threats. And this war involves a 3-act play known as TDIR: threat detection, investigation, and response. And traditionally, SecOps teams rely on a pretty complex mix of tools and manual processes to manage this cycle. And they're often feeling like they're blindfolded with one hand tied behind their backs. Now, when I look at how Google has kind of redefined this segment as a cloud native, and you can even think of it as a revolution because it is cloud first. And Google SecOps, think of it as a cloud native platform, meaning it's built specifically for the modern cloud environment. And imagine a complete SecOps toolkit designed from the ground up for that digital battlefield that we're talking about. And Google Security Operations, they focus on streamlining that entire TDIR process, like I talked about, and they're centralizing the security posture. And then they're offering, and this is what I think a lot of people don't know about the Google solution, is that it is for a cloud environment, but it's not just the Google cloud environment. It's multi-cloud. So think of this as a command center, and it's equipped with tools and technology. And I would say for a lot of organizations, it's giving them an advantage. And we'll talk a little bit about advantage from some of the acquisitions that Google has made over the past couple of years. So I like to look at this as kind of like a powerhouse trio. You've got Google Cloud, you have AI, and then you have threat intelligence. So if I'm looking at this and thinking, well, what makes the Google security operations solution stand out? I mean, I think that there's a couple of things to note. First, the cloud infrastructure. And I think if you look at the global scale of Google, I mean, this translates into ingesting and analyzing massive amounts of security telemetry and information. And I like it because it's like no more building and maintaining your own security infrastructure. Google can do that for you. And for me, I look at this as freeing up resources in the organization, and I can have them do other things. So imagine this as kind of your foundation of the security posture and the ability to scale your defenses. And honestly, that's the only way any of us are going to survive the next, we'll say, 5 years, with how prolific AI is becoming and how attackers have adopted it to leverage for attacks. So that kind of leaves me to the second piece of this, which is AI and automation. And I think of this as still having like a sidekick. I'm not replacing anything, I'm just making things better. So imagine you have an augmented intelligence that's constantly analyzing security data. It's automatically detecting threats, and it's saving security analysts tons of hours of work. And really, that's the power of AI in action. And I like how Google Security Operations has taken full advantage of it. I talked a little bit before about when I was at Google Next and how it was a lot of AI talk at the conference. But the way that Google is pulling Gemini, which is a big part of their Gen AI, into becoming a security sidekick, it's freeing teams to focus on more strategic tasks. And it's helping in things like threat hunting, incident response. And I look at it as having a lot of extra pairs of eyes that are constantly scanning that battlefield we've been talking about. And what are they looking for? Potential threats. And really, that's the name of the game. So some of the things that you may not know, so I'll just go over them quickly, is there's a way of doing unified threat defense with Google and their Mandiant acquisition, as well as VirusTotal. And I know most of you are probably familiar with Chronicle, Simplify, which is the SOAR solution. All of this now is being combined into the whole Google SecOps suite. So I look at this as like a comprehensive intelligence network. And you're getting things like Google Threat Intel. This has a lot of, I think in the industry, you could think of this as unparalleled global reach. And that's just really because Google has that unique view of the threat landscape. And this translates into real-time insights into emerging attacks and some of the latest tactics used by cybercriminals. And then I think of how they're tying this in with the Mandiant expertise. And I think everyone knows Mandiant as the leading name in cyber defense. And they're bringing we'll keep with the battle analogy, they're bringing their battle-tested threat intelligence and their expertise to the table. And their team of security professionals they spend a lot of time tracking threat actors, the threat actors' techniques, and then they're giving insights into the minds of the enemy. And they even have some tooling now, which does attack surface management as well as security validation. So it's not just the Mandiant experts anymore, it's also the threat intelligence and the expertise. And then you've got VirusTotal. And think of this as like a massive online community of security researchers. People are contributing, they're looking at potential threat indicators like we'll just say files, URLs, things that are uploaded. Hey, take a look at this. What does this look like? Yeah, that's malicious, gets pulled into the database, and then that's all real time fed back to defenders. And I think this is most important because the battlefield landscape is changing, and it's changing all the time. So when I'm combining the really those three intelligence sources, and that's something that I recommend always, even if it's not the Google solution, don't just go with one intelligence source. Go with multiple intelligence sources, because that only makes it better, especially when they can correlate and you can start to see that there is a real threat or risk to your organization. So I think of this as a security team having a clear advantage and allowing for a more proactive and effective defense. And it's like having a global network of informants that are feeding you that critical intel about the enemy's movements. And if we're sticking with the battlefield analogy, which I think we are, I look at this as like part of your security arsenal. So if I'm looking at this from the tool perspective, not just the solution, look at Google's security operations and some of the things that come with it as a suite of tools. And the first component of this is the SIM, so security, information, and event management. And why is this important? Well, this is the central hub that ingests data from various sources. Some of them are security sources, some of them are just events. And providing that unified view of your security posture. And this is how we can do a lot of our real-time threat detection. And think of this as the central intelligence center that's gathering information from all fronts. I think the next important piece of this is SOAR, which is security orchestration, automation, and response. Now, imagine all the things that we've talked about, but being able to automate repetitive tasks and streamlining response to security incidents. So SOAR typically empowers a security team to focus on critical issues because they're automating routine tasks. And some of those routine tasks are like isolating a compromised system because it has a vulnerability or there's a patching issue. Honestly, it's like having a well-trained soldier on the front line that is then freeing up your commanders. Think of them as like your security analysts, and you're focusing on strategic decision making. Now, another piece of this is advanced threat detection. And this is where some of the things that we've looked at from Google's AI, as well as the machine learning capabilities, it's giving that advanced threat detection and some of the features. And the important ones are like anomaly detection, behavior analysis, threat hunting. And this gets us into being able to look at sophisticated attacks and responding to those. And think of this, if you have a small team, how would you do that without a advanced threat detection capability? So like imagine having this network of highly trained scouts constantly searching for enemy activity. And even if that activity is cleverly disguised. Now, Attack surface management, really it's all about knowing your weaknesses. And a critical aspect of defense is understanding your attack surface. Now, Google Security Operations, they offer attack surface management capabilities. And this is really to help identify and manage all of those potential entry points for attackers. So this one is definitely important, because if they don't have a way in, what are they going to actually do? Now, think of this as rigorously inspecting those fortress walls that we were talking about, because we're looking to identify any weaknesses before our enemy does. And then security validation. This is just regularly testing our defenses. So what does our military do? They constantly drill. They are constantly conducting drills. They are doing things like validation. Do we have all of our stuff together? So I look at Google SecOps as offering that security validation tool that helps test defenses and then identify areas of improvement. Just because we fail in a test of those defenses, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, because we found it before the attacker. So imagine regularly testing our troops and fortifications to ensure they are prepared for any assault. And then taking this one step further, I talked about what's the advantage. And I look at this as the Mandiant advantage. Clever play on the name, because this takes threat intelligence and incident response beyond. And the reason is none of this stops at threat intelligence, and as well as like, what's the next piece? Well, a lot of times it's responding to an incident. There's ways to prevent and keep some of this in more of that middle ground. So if you're breaking down some of the other capabilities inside of the Google suite, Mandiant has a managed defense capability, which is continuous monitoring and threat hunting. A lot of you may look at this as MDR, that managed detection and response. So look at this as having a dedicated security team that's monitoring your defenses. They're hunting for threats. They're giving your security team that support that they need, and maybe some expertise that you don't have. And think of this as having that highly trained elite squad continuously patrolling your borders and actively searching for an enemy or somebody that's trying to infiltrate. And I would say, based on the discussion, I think you're starting to see that there's a solution here for just about any need when it comes to cybersecurity. And if you're thinking of this from does this fit my organization and the size of my organization? I would say, based on what we're looking at, it really does fit all organizations of all sizes. Really, it's whether you have a simple environment with a low volume of data, or you've got a super complex one with constant security alerts. There is a solution within the Google Security Operations to scale with what your needs are. And this ensures you have the right security posture, really regardless of the size or complexity of your environment. Now, if I'm going to wrap all of this up, I look at this again as building a fortress in the cloud. And this is a dynamic fortress. It's not those old walls with the castle and the moat. It's that powerful AI-driven SecOps platform, and it empowers your organization to build that comprehensive dynamic defense in the cloud. It combines the scale of what Google Cloud is already doing and has been doing, adds the power of AI and automation. So a lot of those advances that Google's made in the past 3 to 5 years. And then the threat intel expertise of not just Google, but Mandiant and VirusTool. So you're getting Google, Mandiant, and then the crowd. And the suite of integrated security solutions that we talked about, like the Mandiant Advantage component, Google security operations overall. I think, you combine all of this and you're pretty well set up to defend against most of the modern threats. And if you're looking to take your security posture to the next level, this is something to consider. Do your research. It is a compelling solution. I've spent a lot of time with it. Like I said in a previous podcast, I spent a lot of time at Google Next. So I got hands-on with a lot of this, and I got to speak with a lot of the leaders and see the direction of the solution. And now that everything is merging together under that one roof, it's got me pretty excited about it, mainly because we'll stick with the battlefield reference. The cyber war is ever evolving. And when you look at cyber threats, I think vigilance is 100% the key. And that's why security operations is so important. And I think if you consider Google and Google security operations, you will have that powerful arsenal at your disposal to keep your data as well as your system safe. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to the next time on State of Enterprise IT Security Edition.